When the first trailer for Storm Connections was first released, many people's initial reaction was to assume that this was a collection pack of the previous Storm games. But recently, after further discussion and assessment of the situation, I think people are slowly starting to realize that it's not the case. This is straight up a new game, and anyone who still thinks this is a collection pack is just ignorant. There's no other way to put it. However, I want to tackle a different point made regarding this game, and it's one that I've read a few times in several comment sections, which is the question of why this is a full new game instead of an expansion pack. Many people argue that this would have been better suited for DLC material for Storm 4 instead of charging for an entirely new game, which I kind of understand where people are coming from. Now, look, I'm a cheap ass, so I can sympathize with the hesitance of paying $60 for a video game, and a lot of people already own Storm 4 and don't like the idea of having to pay for the same game again. Now, although I get why people have this stance, I actually completely disagree, and let me explain why. Now, first things first, let me just remind you that I'm coming into this video with the most uncharitable and frankly dishonest interpretation of this game, which is that it's going to be the exact same as Storm 4, even though it's blatantly false. We've already had 2 trailers, and even though neither of them have gone into any details on the gameplay changes, we've already discovered a few things that are different from Storm 4. If you would like some context, I would highly recommend you watch this video that I uploaded very recently. But just for the sake of an argument, let's entertain the idea of this being an expansion pack. I personally don't think this would have resulted in a better product. Now, I've shown this before in a different video, but if you check the Steam page for Storm Connections, it says here that the disk size requirement is 26 gigabytes, which is actually lower than Storm 4's requirement of 40 gigabytes. Now, I choose to believe that it's because the game is less bloated. Some might argue that it's because it has less content. One thing is for certain, this gap in size demonstrates that we're dealing with 2 different pieces of code. And I know for a fact that CC2 have been stress testing the game and potentially tweaking the engine, especially because based on the changes that I've been noticing in the trailers, as well as the direction of Bandai Namco's recent games, I do believe they're planning to make this game more competitive and treating it more like a live service that will provide support and updates for years to come. And as weird as it might be to say this, I actually think that building a different game might be better than them trying to support an existing game. I mean, sure, theoretically they could also make DLC content for Storm 4 for years to come, as well as even patching the game up, maybe provide some balance changes and minor tweaks. But the thing is, this is a game from 2016, and everything I've heard regarding the development of the title, it seems like it went through a messy production. And one thing you need to understand about game development is that, sure, you could go back to the original code and maybe try to fix some of the bugs and instabilities in the form of patches, but at the end of the day, there are some problems that just can't be fixed with simple patches. I know that in recent years we've kind of been spoiled by the idea of games getting better after patch updates, but at the end of the day, patches can't magically fix every issue that a game has, because at the end of the day, all they do is alter and replace parts of the code from the original game data, but there are some problems that are so deeply rooted that fixing it would involve revamping so much of the architectural design of the code base that expecting it to be fixed without having to essentially rewrite the whole game is just impossible. Now, I'm not a developer and was never a part of the development of Storm 4, so I don't know the deeps and ends of the game's source code or whatever the fuck. I wouldn't be able to tell you what's easy to fix and what isn't, but what I can say is that based on the 35% size difference between Storm Connections and Storm 4, to me it's pretty clear that they're rebuilding a lot of the underlying code. And to be honest, sometimes it's easier to just build a new game than trying to add more stitches into an already broken game. And let me tell you, Storm 4 has a lot of broken tech, a lot of bugs, a lot of weird instabilities like the MSAA anti-aliasing being broken on PC, sudden blue screens during online matches on the PS4. Could these things be easily patched? It's possible, but it's also possible that it can't be fixed without having to rewrite the whole game. Remember when Captain Tsubasa Rise of a New Champions tried to fix the netcode by changing it to delay base, but then you would play the game and realize, wow, it's still as broken and unplayable as I remember. Also, this is just my personal opinion, but I don't like this idea that you're getting a worse value by paying for a new game than to pay for a hypothetical DLC. First of all, DLC, season passes, they're not even content that you technically even own. The base game, you do own it if you have the physical copy, But the downloadable content, you don't own that. It's tied to your account. There isn't even guarantee that it'll remain up forever. We've seen in the past that game companies, when they delist their games or shut down their servers, even the DLC content can be affected. Why would I want to pay for something that I don't necessarily even own? This is actually one of the reasons for why I actually have 2 copies of Storm 4. The first one is the digital version, which I bought several years ago, and since then I also paid for the first season pass, Road to Boruto, and the Momoshiki pack. I bought them because at the time I wanted to play them, but then last year I bought a bundle containing 2 discs, one for Storm 4, Road to Boruto, and the other one was Shinobi Striker. I did this because I wanted to own all of the content, not some of them, all. If Baron mode, supporting Kage Sasuke, injuring Ashura were all part of an expansion pack, that's more content that I have to pay for that I don't own. And one thing you need to understand about the live service hellhole is that eventually after some time, the amount of money that you spend on DLC content is going to surpass the price of the original game when it first came out. And the same is true for some connections. Eventually, if they keep supporting this game for years, and it seems like they are gonna do that, it's gonna cost more to keep up with the newly released content than the actual game, especially if they reduce the price of the base game, which is bound to happen at some point. That's one of the reasons for why I'm not exactly the biggest fan of this release model, because I feel like it's a little bit misleading. It fools people into believing they are paying in smaller amounts for minor content that adds to the greater already paid game, when eventually after a while the total amount of the smaller content is the most expensive part. Although in all honesty, it's the lack of ownership that upsets me the most. Like, nothing is gonna piss me off even more than the idea that stuff that I pay for is tied to an account that can be revoked from me if my account ever gets banned, if they ever decide to delist it, and all that shenanigans. I've talked about this like a million times in my past videos. It's sad because there was actually a time when it used to be normal for game publishers to release a sort of ultimate edition containing all of the DLC content and additional balance updates, but this practice has kind of been dissipating in recent years, and I'm not expecting any better from Storm Connections. But even with that said, if I had to pick between CyberConnect 2 continuing to support an old, bloated game that they're probably not even going to be able to fix every single issue because some are just so deeply embedded into the underlying code base, or them creating a new title and having the opportunity to rebuild it from scratch, introducing new mechanics, porting it to newer consoles, improving the visuals, hopefully providing a better network infrastructure and giving us a new original story mode, I honestly would rather pay for the $60. I'm more than happy paying double the price of a season pass if it means that I'm getting a better game. But then again, that's just me. I'm sure you might value your money differently, which is reasonable. But do bear in mind that eventually this game will go down in price. It will be cheaper than whatever money you would pay for a season pass. So if you're that hung up on the money, that's completely fine. Wait a couple of months, maybe even years if you're that committed to the long wait. And until then, pay attention to the reviews. I know I will definitely review this when I get my hands on it. And until then, just relax a little bit. We still don't know a lot about this game, so let's just be a little bit patient. Anyway, I know I promised that I was going to record that Demon Slayer video, but I just had to get this video out because this was kind of scrambling my brain. Anyway, that's all I have to share. Take care.